Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show video, and today I'm going to be tier listing all the new content, kind of helping you guys figure out who you should go buy, who you should be grinding for with Team Affinity and whatnot, and just kind of the general layout of a lot of these cards. Obviously, there is some variations with these cards, like we saw it last year with Mike Trout with the milestone card. They have started to give same players, but different versions of those players, different swings. So that's something to always think about. I don't know if this Santander has the exact same swing as his live series or not. We've already seen it this year with like Castellanos. His flashback had a different swing from his live series. So that is worth mentioning. This is just kind of my best estimate until I can use all these cards and grind all these cards myself. This will be my best estimate on how good these cards are, how they fit in the meta. And also they're being compared to themselves and the scaling now, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense to compare these guys to the 99s that we just had, or even some of the live series core cards that don't really have anything to do with this drop. So real quick, right before we get into it, if you want to stay up to date with everything MLB The Show, I'd urge you to like and subscribe. We're going to be doing it all year. And yeah, let's get into it. So first card up, Toro. This card has absolutely no power, but his contact's in a great spot. And his swing is pretty good, I believe. The power is the real issue for him. Does play third, second, and first, so there's some value there, mainly at second base. Adrian, just not super great. I almost want to put him C tier. I don't think anybody should be using him. One theme you will notice is the pitching is really weak. There's a lot of value in having Shohei or Pedro right now, or even Babe. Just because the pitching is super weak right now, at least starting pitching is. Bregman, I wanted this card to be better. He's just not. I believe he can't hit righties, if I'm remembering right. So it's actually lefties. He can't hit lefties. He does have like every quirk in the game. I do typically like his swings. Also has a lot of good positions he can play. In BR, this card will probably be great. Probably not a card you want to drag into rank, though. Verdugo, this card's horrendous. If you really want to use him, his swing's not bad. His stats aren't awful, but he just cannot hit one side. He cannot hit lefties, so he will struggle there. It just kind of depends on how the meta evolves, how many lefty starters are viable. Santander, this is an S tier card. I like what they did with him. The hitting stats across the board aren't amazing. It reminds me a lot of the WBC one from last year, where stat-wise probably wasn't deserving of being on like the best team in the game. But Santander always has an immaculate swing, and certain people just always get along very well with this card. You can see also they gave this card first base secondary, which is very nice and something they've been doing more so in recent years. Dead red, unfazed, situational. 8178, so that's more so probably towards the bottom of the contacts that you want right now. But 92 power, 82 power left, and then good clutch. And the reaction's immaculate. The reaction's great. So I think that helps him not be as much of a defensive liability. I think he'll be on a lot of people's teams for at least this very start of the season. This Volpe card, I'm not sure about A tier. He does a lot of things well. Pretty much every like stat on this card is like 75, with the exception of his contacts being kind of high. But you know, the fielding across the board is like just average. It's fine. And the power is in a really bad spot, but the clutch is fine. The contact's fine. Is he worth the stubs this early in the season? Probably not. But he is still a pretty solid card there. This Chapman, probably I want to put A tier. You would think a Chapman this early in the season, or just a Chapman in general, would be S tier. But this guy only has 3 pitches. He has a 4-seam slider and circle, which is, you know, more or less primarily what you were throwing with him anyway in previous years. But I will say you're going to miss that splitter more than I think you're going to realize. But just hits-wise, right? Just hits-wise, clutch-wise, this card's gross. He's going to be still hard to hit lefty-lefty. So I do like him. I don't know if he's worth the collection this early on, but everybody will have that card here in a minute. I believe this is Ben Brown. Throws kind of a fast fastball, throws a slurve. So if you're on a higher difficulty, maybe you can just exploit the slurve and shrink your opponent's PCI the whole game. Other than that, not super great. Snell, more or less same thing. Last year we started getting snails with like 5-pitch mixes. This time they go back to kind of the Joe Random mix, to where he's not going to be super great, but his hits are in a really good spot, right? So if you're on Hall of Fame, playing people that struggle in the Hall of Fame, or if you're on Legend, I think Snail will have some value, and probably could work his way in the best rotation in the game. But if you're an all-star player, I don't know why you'd necessarily be using him at this point. I want to say Bo's S tier. A lot of people always really enjoy his swings. I believe it's more or less the same this year. Awesome contact left, decent enough against righties, good enough power left, a little subpar against lefties. And the clutch is good, and the fielding is not putrid. It's not the worst thing you've ever seen. He probably will make some errors, but that's kind of where we're at with the start of the season. If you want people that hit, you're probably gonna make some errors. If you want people that are Gold Glovers, you're probably going to not hit a lot of home runs. So you kind of have to pick your poison. Brandon Lau, I think I want him to be S tier, but I got to really dive into the stats. 71, 89, 92, 104. So at second base, it's going to be hard for you to get better value, but I can't deny that he's going to have some really small PCIs on Hall of Fame, and especially on Legend. If you have him coming up against Blake Snell on Legend, that's not going to be a fun at bat. But for most all-star players, he's going to be good enough, definitely. This 95 chipper, I went ahead and included the 95 bosses because I think people probably can be getting them in like a week or two. If people already have the smaller bosses, I think you get these at like 400k. Then I think it more or less makes sense that they will be in the meta soon. I think chipper's the best 95 to take. You're looking 117, 96, 115, 92. For when you can get this card, if you are one of the earlier players to get this card, he's going to be insane. Obviously is a disgustingly bad fielder. Does not have left field secondary, but it's Chipper Jones. He's going to hit tanks, always one of the best batters in the game. That card's more or less no different. I believe this is the 91 chipper. I don't know why yeah. So it is. This card is terrible. You could make the argument that his BR card that he got earlier last season is probably better than this one. Absolutely smashes righties though. So if you want to, for some reason, platoon a switch hitter, then he's there for it. And his swing will still be good and he'll still have all the quirks. That's the wrong sale. Hopefully they have the other one. There we go. So we'll go ahead and do him. This rookie Chris Sale should be an absolute stud. Has really good through nines, I believe. Yeah, 89. The control is a little suspect, but it has that really slow slider, 4-seam, 2-seam changeup. So no sinker on this guy, but really you're using him because he's a reliever. A guy like this could be the reason why Andrew Miller's price just tanks. Everybody should have this Chris Sale in their bullpen at this point of the season. I can't guarantee that he's going to age super great, but he's not a bad card. Clark Schmidt, again, not a bad card for this point of the season. If you need a 5-pitch mix with a kind of hard sinker, he's one of your only options right now. 84 hits. 125 clutch is very nice, but there's other alternatives for that. If you just want a guy with high clutch, you could use Jose Alvarado. Corbin Carroll's captain card, I want to say he's like more or less top of A. They fixed his swing. It's not nearly as bad as it is last year. You can see his contacts are in a great spot. His power right isn't in a bad spot. His clutch is decent. His fielding's decent, and he's very fast. And his boost isn't too bad, but we're not going to really account for the boost. Very solid card, honestly. If you are somebody that used Jarren Duran last season, or Taylor Trammell, or, that archetype of hitter, Lou Brock, this Corbin Carroll can do all that and more, especially this early in the season. You can kind of justify running those low power guys more. Carlson always has an awesome swing. Another switch hitting outfielder. Not the fastest. Again, neither of these guys are going to play center field, but 82-90, so already in a better contact spot than Santander. Does not quite have the power. The clutch is decent. Not a bad fielder, doesn't have the reaction. I'd rather have Santander personally with the reaction, but he's also a little bit faster. So two very good cards. Carlson usually has a good swing, also has first base secondary. This is a sneaky little spot that you could sneak him at. I think he's very good at this point in the season. Eddie Murray, I was hoping this card would be a little bit better. I'm going to have to really dive into his stats, but yeah, 80, 102, not terrible. The power is not terrible. The clutch isn't bad. I think he's fine. I think if I put Carlson S tier, I gotta put him S tier. The ability to be a switch hitter at this point of the season is very valuable. No quirks on an Eddie Murray card is kind of crazy, just because he is a legend and usually they juice them with quirks. But his swing's kind of weird. His foot is like facing the pitcher, that throws some people off. But every time I've ever used a Murray card, he's been a absolute dog. Rosario, I think I want to put S tier. I'm going to need a stat review on him. 90, 92, 65, 85. So what I'm seeing is David Justice, pretty much. If you like David Justice from the last one, I think you're going to like Eddie Rosario from this team Affinity. Basically, same team, same positions. Probably should never see a lefty. More of a platoon guy. At least Eddie Rosario kind of has the contact to justify. So I usually like his swings. He usually has a very good swing. Of course, Whitley, I think he's like just comfortable A tier. He's fine. Again, kind of similar to Clark Schmidt. If you just need a guy with 5 pitches that throws a hard sinker, he's one of your only options this early in the season. And his hits through 9 are also in a really good spot when you compare him to kind of where hitters are at this point of the season. So I like Whitley. I think he's probably the best team Affinity pitcher. And I think for that reason, he just gets to S tier right off rip. Alvarez probably won't be very popular for this one, but I've always disliked his swing. Every swing they've ever given him, I've not liked. I don't think these stats really jump off the board at you. I don't really like him, so for that reason, I'm gonna ding him. But if you want to argue that he's bottom of A tier, you definitely could do that. Hampson, this is like a bunt demon, bloop demon type card. Not really going to be super meta, but again, if you do want to run those type of players, this is the time of the season to do it, because you can make the argument that they are actually worth running. Gavin Lux, this card's very good. I think he's like borderline S tier. I think the power's a little bit low. 83, 97, 75, 83. So a little bit low, but more or less where you want to be. Great fielder. Is a second baseman, but you could play him at shortstop and he would play the same, if not better defense than the guy like Bo Bichette would. I think he's probably S tier for the card art alone. And then when you actually look at the card, I think he's definitely an S tier. Stanton, this card's fine. If you really enjoyed the Marlin Stanton last season, this is basically a slightly worse version of that. His boost is basically unusable at this point of the season. Not really a use in using his boost, but if you really like that Marlin Stanton, this is just a downgraded version of that. The hitting stats aren't too much worse than that card. Really, it's the fielding that's going to fall off a cliff. He's basically a DH, but really, who isn't at this point of the season? So this is Harrison Bader, another BR card that, again, in BR, this card will probably be immaculate. And I would probably say do not bring him into ranked. He's going to be great for BR. Probably wouldn't use him in ranked. Hunter Dozier, who remembers this guy? He had like 2 years that was really solid for the Royals, and then not a lot after that. I'm not sure what his swing looks like historically, but this card has really good stats. 103, 86, 81, 78. So the hitting stats are in a great spot. The fielding isn't as bad as it probably should be if you've ever seen him play. So he's a very good card, and not a bad pick. Clint Frazier, or Jackson Frazier now, I guess. His swing looks really good in his card. I cannot really remember ever using one. 84, 76, 94, 88. So actually, the power is in a great spot. The clutch is in a good spot. Not a bad fielder at all. If you're an all-star player, I think he gives you everything you could possibly want. If you're comfortable in Hall of Fame, I think he's great. On Legend, probably not going to be using this card. James Paxton, I think he's up there. I think he's one of the better pitchers available this early in the season. 97 hits, that's really high at this point, and he has a good pitch mix with a cutter and a sinker. There's not a whole lot of people that have that right now. He might not be the James Paxton of years past, where he's throwing 99 every pitch, but he is still a very good pitcher with a very good pitch mix, especially with how weak starting pitchers are right now. Walsh, this card's here because if you're on Hall of Fame, he will probably struggle a little bit. If you're on Legend, he'll definitely struggle. but he is very easily this season's Gary Sanchez, where he absolutely rakes against one side of the plate. You can see against righties, he was 108.95, and then against lefties, he has no contact, but still very good power. And his clutch isn't in a great spot. So I think a good comp for him is kind of Gary Sanchez. If you're really comfortable with him, if you really like his swing, you can run him up to a very high difficulty. Otherwise, I'd probably stay away. Hellenic, however you say it. This card's all right. He's kind of fast. He always has a good swing. I don't know if it was this year or last year where he got supercharged on like opening day. But his swing is always very good. 78, 94, 70, 80. The clutch is decent, and he's not slow. So probably not going to be your primary center fielder, but if you want to play him there, you can definitely get away with it. The J. Hay Kid. This card's fine. I think his hitting stats are absolutely terrible, but if you want a defensive outfielder, he's going to be one of your only options right now. 75, 86. So against righties, he's definitely serviceable. Against lefties, he is awful. He is atrocious. 75, 57. That's really tough to work with at this point. 86, 78. 90 clutch, but fielding, you're getting him for his fielding, but even then he's not going to be that awesome because he has 56 speed. Honestly, with 56 speed and 87 reaction, you might as well have Santander out there at that point. So I don't really see a point why you'd want him, but if you want, more defensive based outfielders, I think he's fine. Jeff McNeil, top of B tier, always has a good swing, and his power always plays better or higher than his card says he would. But it's still really bad, right? 95, 99, 44 against lefties, 77 against righties, 109 clutch. Really where this card has value is if you need like a Stephen Kwan, right? If you just got promoted to Hall of Fame, if you are just now playing on Legend for the first time ever, and you feel like you need that bigger PCI, that's where guys like this are going to have value, not necessarily on like All-Star. Duran, a lot of people probably want this guy to be S tier. I think he's fine. Having double outlier actually hurts this card. First time I think you can ever say that. The fact that his splitter is being thrown almost as hard as his four seam works great in real life. Does not work great in the game. You're just going to get a ton of foul balls. Obviously, they are talking about adjusting foul balls. Who knows how that will go. But it's hard to get strikeouts with this guy. When you're not getting swings and misses on the sliders and the 12-6, your go-to would be that splitter. But he's still at 97, 98 miles an hour. Just not very good speed differentials for that card. But if you need that outlier arm out the pin, I cannot deny that he is still very good. This is probably Joe Morgan. It is. For this point in the game, I think he's S tier. Now, is it worth you sitting here and locking in a ton of stubs and grinding all of your team affinity and doing all that to get him? No, of course not. But if you get this card relatively soon, he's very similar to like Rich Arulia, where like he can probably be in your team for the next month and not be terrible. He gives you a lot of decent stuff at second base. A lot of people usually really like his swing. You can see he has a lot of good quirks. Value-wise, is he S tier? Probably not. But he is still very solid. Joey Bart, this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier with Alvarez. These two are basically the same statistically. One has a little more power or a little more contact against one side than the other, but they're basically the same card statistically. Give me Joey Bart swing all day long. By far, if you're asking me to pick between the two, I think Bart gets the bump. Montgomery does not throw very hard, but does have a 5-pitch mix, I believe. Has okay hits through 9. Again, yeah, it's a 5-pitch mix, but it's almost like a Joe Random 5-pitch mix. Really, the sinker is the only thing saving it. So I think he's all right. He's not a bad card by any means. But, if he's worth that value or not, it's really up to you. Hader and Sale, very similar cards. Hader's obviously throwing more of a fast slider. But this Hader got 4 pitches back. So, in years past, I've loved Hader cards with 4. Everybody expects the 4-seam. Occasionally, if you want to throw that 2-seam in the dirt, just the hitter seeing a different spin is sometimes enough for them to swing at it. So I enjoy Hader when he has 4 pitches. JP Crawford, probably close to S tier. Everybody always raves about his swing. I've never really found it super meta to use any of his cards, but this isn't a bad card. The power left's in a really bad spot. The power right's not great. The clutch is not great, but the fielding, my bad. The fielding is in a very good spot, and the speed is pretty decent. But really, if you use him, it's because you like his swing historically. I don't think he's a bad card. I think he's more like Jason Hayward, to where like you could argue to kick him out of this tier and put him in B. This Griffey card, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to do some research here. I think this is basically a DH or a corner outfielder. Definitely not a center fielder. 80, 98, 90, 100. At this point of the season, very good. Obviously, again, do not play this card in center field. If you want a Griffey to play in center field, you're better off having the 42 series or whatever, the Hyper Series Griffey, over this one. But he is very good as a corner outfielder or as a DH. This 95 Griffey, I think, is even more of an upgrade compared to the other one. This one could play center field if you really wanted him to. Probably still not a smart idea with 70 speed. Basically a direct upgrade of the other. You're getting a little more contact, a little more power. I think for the point of the season where this guy will be widely attainable to most people, it probably won't be worth it. And he probably won't be S tier. But I think, just stats wise compared to all these other guys, he deserves to be there. Pilar, probably one of the best defensive outfielders I've ever seen. Does not really reflect that with this card. You can see he has inverse splits, which is, I'm good on that, especially when one side has 48 power. 97 clutch, not really good defensively either. Not really a Pilar I would ever use. Next up, we got Lee Smith, who is, a little bit deep into the XP path. If you enjoyed I forget what it was last year, Charisma Series 1, if you enjoyed the Charisma Lee Smith, that's basically kind of more or less where this one's at, in comparison to like the one that he got at the end of last year. Very solid card, probably going to be in a lot of people's bullpen. I don't think he will have the longevity that like Raleigh had last season, but at this point, he's still very good. Leote, this card for me is S tier. I always love his swing, so the fact that they give him a card that has halfway decent power is crazy to me. 68, 74, 82, 88. The clutch, but the fielding, though. I think I'll probably drop him a little bit, but if you really need a center fielder, I think you could definitely argue that he is S tier. Trevino, S tier for sure. The fact this dude was cooking guys for me in Moonshot earlier tells you all you need to know. Trevino has all the tools. He just needed better through nines for you to actually use him in ranked. Here he is, 95. Obviously still has like the same pitch mix, cutter, four seam, sinker, curveball, circle change. I think the other one might have a slider. Don't quote me. But still a very, very good card, very usable. This Castillo, more of like an all-star card. That's the thing about using the Castillo captain, is I'm just not very comfortable pitching with him. He's not very good. He kind of relies on that outlier sinker, which he doesn't even have on this card. You can see basically these two are going to be the same pitch, and then slider, circle change. So he's almost a 3-pitch pitcher. He's like a 3.5 pitch pitcher. Not going to perform the greatest when you go up against better players. This card, bottom of A tier. If you can make his swing work, he has the attributes for it. 110, 73, 86, 76. Very good clutch, very good fielding, especially at this point of the season. The problem is his swing is one of the worst I have ever used in MLB The Show. The last 2 years, he is kind of my litmus test for how well I'm playing. If I am nuking stuff with Luis Robert, then I'm beating Pitch and Rebel. If I am not, then I'm going to lose to somebody in their first BR game. Like there's like no in between. He is kind of my litmus test for how well I'm playing on the game. His swing is atrocious, but if you can make it work, statistically, he is just an awesome card. Mo, probably top of S tier. This is the Randy of this season. You are going to want this card moving forward. He's going to age very well. 106, 105, 82 walks, 5-pitch Mo release. If historically you like Mo cards, this is more so the Raleigh fingers of this season. I think this is the card that will stay in people's lineups the longest. other than like 95 chipper or something, or like Hater or Sale, a spot reliever, like a specialist reliever. This Mo card will age immaculate. I can't see any way. God, there's that word again. He'll age great. Mark Canha, I think he's top of A tier. Definitely a defensive liability, but who isn't at this point in the season? 65, 116, 88, 99. So hitting wise, very good. The clutch kind of offsets the poor contact left, but you can see he's absolutely abysmal in the field. So I don't love that, but he is still very usable if you just want a left fielder to hit, or if you need a DH or something. He can definitely fill in there. I think Mark McGwire, definitely S tier at this point of the season. I'm curious as to what swing they gave him. If they gave him that swing that's like on his gold card or whatnot. The contacts are not in the best spot, right? These are basically contacts that like Santander has, to where it's kind of on the lower side of what you want to be using. But the power is insane at this point of the season. He's probably going to age like milk, and you probably won't see a lot of people using him a month and a half from now, 2 months from now. Definitely not. But he has a lot of value in this current meta where the game's at right now. Matt Holliday, this is probably the best ranked reward they've dropped, like those stepping stone ranked players like McCutcheon, Fielder, Kirk. This is probably the best one they've dropped. 90, 114, 86, 80, 101 at this point in the game. Even if you're not going to play him in the field, which he's not terrible in the field, he's kind of like a slightly better Dante Bichette in the field. He did not give him first base secondary, which is kind of tough. But this card is awesome. He is amazing. As far as the like stepping stone ranked players go, I think he's probably the best. Matt Manning, this card is trash. 2 curveballs on the pitchers, just not very good. I don't really care what else he has otherwise. He'd have to have outlier for me to really care. Strom, another strong lefty. You see, we have 3 strong lefty relievers here. No strong lefty starters, but the relievers are very strong to start the season. Merrill Kelly, I debated on this one for a while, either S or A. He had that playoffs card last year that I really enjoyed, and I did very well against some very good players with that card. This basically has the same pitch mix, just kind of, scaled down to be an 89 overall. Big fan of Merrill Kelly. I think you could argue S tier on him. Andujar, I think, is similar to Canha in a way, if I'm not mistaken. 101, 89, 85, 70. So the power right's a little bit low, but the clutch is awesome. Not the best fielder in the world. This is a recycled card done right. He got that choice pack one last season that nobody used. This is a much better time in the meta to use this Andujar. I think he probably sneaks into S tier. Like, who do you really want at like third base over him? I just noticed he's a left fielder. Again, you probably want to play him at first, third, or DH. But who do you really want over him out of those? There's the only third baseman here is like the 95 chipper. So I think that's a lot of value right there. Mike Messina might get some pushback for this. The problem with him is always he doesn't have a slider. Kind of has that Merrill Kelly pitch mix, but he throws a slow cutter, which is not really my favorite. You can see it also his hits aren't in the best spot, but if you need a control freak early on in the season, he's your guy. Mitch Kelleher, this card's terrible. The Team Affinity pitchers from this Team Affinity are just absolute poo-poo. Like they are awful. Last one we had some at least viable options in like Flaherty, Greinke, Webb. This time they're really bad across the board. There's very few solid ones. Cassie, S tier for sure. Talking about Andujar, if you want to run this Castellanos at third, he's a very good option. Also as first. Is way more of a defensive liability than like the 95 that we had, but kind of makes sense when they scale him back and his hitting stats still look like this. Something has to give, and it was the fielding and the speed by a little bit. But if you enjoy Castellanos, you will probably enjoy this card. He might have a different swing than the other. I'm not sure. Depends on if they gave him his live series or that flashback. Owen Miller, this card's fine. I think he has really, really bad contact against one side. 78, not really bad, but it's definitely bad. 71 power right. 106 clutch. Not a bad card, right? Does jack of all trades, kind of. I believe he plays a bunch of positions also. So I think there's value in that card. I'm not gonna sit here and gas him up and say he's the best, but I think there's value for sure. Cornerstone Devers, he's got to go A tier minimum at least just for the swing. The stats aren't very good, but the swing, he has the quirks that like the Live Series one has: 81, 91, 71, 93. This will probably be the only card I do this for, but you know, if you put some parallels on him, this card's in a very good spot. And his boost isn't too bad. He's basically like the Buxton for this season. Is kind of the way they're going with him. Robert Stevenson, just another bad Team Affinity pitcher. They just did not want it. Here's Ryan Yarborough. Might as well go ahead and do him also. Other bad Team Affinity. Yarborough wouldn't be terrible if he was a reliever, but him being a starter is just not it. Royce Lewis probably sneaks in the S tier. This card has one just glaring problem. His only flaw is the power left is really bad, but the quirks will hopefully make up for it a little bit. So there's always the option of like platooning him, or kind of maybe, I don't know, playing him in a position where power isn't as important, like second base. But a very solid card, one of the better Team Affinity cards. The problem is the power. A lot of people usually like his swing. This 95 Roy Halladay I'm putting top of A tier. Roy, if you know him, he's really only good on like Hall of Fame and Legend. He's usually historically like the best Legend pitcher in the game every year. Everybody uses him as their go-to. This card's not gonna have great value. Like even if you're getting him a week from now, 82 hits on Legend is not too crazy right now. Obviously the control is very good, but 82 hits, 79 clutch on Legend, just not super great. And you know, most people will not have him a week from now, 2 weeks from now. They'll have him a month from now. And if that's him, I would not be using this card. But assuming you're getting him right now, he's all right. This Roy, absolutely awful. I mean, he has a 5 pitch, so I guess he has that over those Team Affinity guys, but 72 hits. But this one has way higher clutch. Interesting. The pitches are good. And if you're on Hall of Fame right now, if you're on Legend right now, there'll definitely be some value in them. But for your average player that's on All-Star, on low Hall of Fame, not really that guy. Tanner Scott, if you remember last season, a lot of people use his gold. Basically a cheaper version of Andrew Miller. Not a bad card at all. Slider, 4-seam sinker. Not a bad card. Decent control, decent hits. So not a bad lefty option. I think I prefer everybody in the S tier over him, but not a bad card at all. TJ Antone, I'm not sure about putting him S tier. I don't think I've ever used a TJ Antone card. But on paper, he looks filthy. 101. The control's bad, but that's kind of what gives at this point in the season, right? If you have high hits, you probably have high control. If you're a batter with high contact, you probably have low power. If you have both, you probably have poor fielding. That's just kind of how it goes. But sinker, slider, slurve, circle change. So slider, slurve's kind of a problem, makes him a 3-pitch pitcher. For that reason alone, I think I drop him to A tier. But he is still a very solid card. This Teo platoon card, you know, if you want to play like Royce Lewis in the outfield, maybe you platoon him with this Teo. You can see 104, 113, 74, 82. So just really bad against righties. The clutch kind of makes up for it. The fielding actually isn't bad on this card. The reaction is not great. Usually has a good swing. If you do get along well with like those slap swings, I do enjoy him. He's pretty solid, but I don't think he's S tier material. Trey, very good. At the moment, very good. And I think a lot of people look at him and they see, what is it? 65 power right, and they're like, ugh. But his swing plays, he's kind of like Jeff McNeil, where he kind of always hits the ball harder than what his stats say. And also, this card can play second base. Not only can he play center field, right? The reaction's very bad, but the speed is nice. So if you want him in center field right now, he might be one of your best options. Definitely probably the best you can go buy without having the wild card. But also at second base, right? If you project this card a month from now, these stats are still very usable as a second baseman. As a shortstop, they'll probably be better shortstops a month from now. But second base, it's going to be kind of hard to outdo this card. I think he actually has really solid value for most people. Tristan, I think probably top of A tier. There's not really reason to not use this card. He's very solid. 80, 94, 83, 91. So just very good. Hitting numbers, has some good quirks. I'm not too sure about his swing. I don't know if I've ever used a Tristan Kossoff card, but he is very solid. Not a bad card by any means. Robles, would not touch this card with a 10-foot pole. All he is a defensive contact focused center fielder. 95, 89, 62, 45. So that's incredibly bad. 89 clutch. Pretty fast with halfway decent fielding. So basically, this is your Kevin Kiermaier of this season, except he's a righty with a worse swing. So I'm not a huge fan, but if you want that pure defensive 8-9 hitter center fielder archetype, he's probably your guy. Vinny Castilla, one of the more underrated cards every year. He's doesn't have a bad swing, usually has some pretty good quirks. 110, 83, 101, 85. At this point of the season, very good. Decent fielder also. Always an underrated card in the show. And usually it's just because they give him cards at bad times. This might be the best time in the year they've ever given Vinny a card. So if you've never used one, I would urge you to go check him out. Definitely probably a better pick for most people from BR over somebody like Mussina. And then Zach Collins kind of rounds it out as our last card here. I gotta look at his contacts again. 62, 88, 90, 104, 84 clutch. So I think the clutch kind of rounds it out. This is basically the Gary Sanchez of this season. If you are an all-star player, Hall of Fame player, Zach Collins can definitely be your catcher. He can 100% do it for you. When you get on Legend, that type of contact and stuff might be a problem. But on those lower difficulties where you just want power, it's going to be hard for you to find a better catcher than Zach Collins. And yeah, guys, that is kind of everything wrapped up. Go ahead and save it. And link this for you guys in the description. But this is kind of everybody I would take right now. You can see Team Affinity in this first tier. We got Santander, Bichette, Carlson, Whitley, Lux. I believe Hader is Team Affinity. And that is Royce Lewis, and Zach Collins. So I think those are the best Affinity cards. Other than that, everybody else is solid for the most part, other than every pitcher not named Forrest Whitley. They are pretty bad. But yeah, guys, that is it for the initial reactions. Be on the lookout for infielders, outfielders, pitchers coming soon. Till next time.